I'm Howie Lim. This is Money Hacks by the Business Times. As the cost of living spirals unpredictably, true financial security isn't found in a neat budget. It's forged by having immediate, accessible cash when a financial shock hits. The current reality is stark. Rising household expenses are brutally exposing the gap between appearing financially stable and being genuinely prepared. In Singapore, that pressure is very real. It's measurable. March saw inflation surge, driven by higher petrol and retail costs. COEs for our cars, astronomical. Simultaneously, household electricity tariffs jumped over 2% in April, and the MAS was forced to raise its 2026 inflation. Oh no, what to do? So it is in this moment that liquidity stops being a preference and becomes a survival tool. We'll find out how. Joining us to discuss is Walter de Oude, founder and CEO of Chocolate Finance. Walter, always good to speak. Hello.
Hey, Howie. Great to be here on the show with you.
Rising costs. Yikes. Why do rising costs expose this limit that budgeting alone can't help with? Because pressure doesn't arrive evenly, does it?
That's exactly right, Howie. I guess, financial stress or money, or it just doesn't move in a straight line. Life is not a straight line. If everything was in a straight line, having a good budget can manage you along that line. But if the line is moving, we have to be more prepared than just having a budget. It's about making sure that there's enough to survive the line as it changes. And inflation is one of those things that moves that line for us.
I feel as though it's like how they say, our pay is rising, so you should be okay. But the costs are not rising at the same pace. In fact, they're rising faster. That financial stress will come from, these little things coming together and hitting at the same time.
That's right. I think financial stress doesn't always come from one big bill that's going to hit you and all of a sudden you have stress. What we've seen is the stress comes really when you have lots and lots of small bills that all stack. And all of a sudden what you were doing and the life you were living before is not possible within the current constraints of what you have in your current budgets. So the trick then is to think through how to be more prepared and have liquid assets available to manage that until your next paycheck or pay rise comes and you can readjust.
So what do we do? Aside from, say, try and earn more money, how do we get this clearer cash structure, so to speak, so that we can absorb volatility when it hits and don't have to panic? Yeah,
I guess the trick is really just to make sure that you have enough liquidity or cash available to you for you when you need it. That means being financially prepared now and not having to tap into longer-term savings to meet short-term needs that might arise as a result of rising inflation. Of course, you have a budget and you can readjust your budget from time to time, knowing how far your money is going. But actually having the financial preparedness of having money accessible to you and liquid and available to you means that can reduce your stress actually in how you plan for your next bit of expenditure.
How do we tell? Because let's say we've had a plan, we always think ahead, emergency expenses or emergency fund. So looking financially organized is different from being financially prepared is what you're saying. How do we tell?
Well, having readily available cash is the answer to being financially prepared.
I do that.
Yeah?
I take 20% of my pay and I put it away.
And most people do. So putting it away doesn't always necessarily mean that you are financially prepared for a liquid event. For example, if you had that money put away in your savings, the question is, can you access that savings when you need to? And will there be a financial consequence if you access that savings when you need to? I'll give another example. If you put your money into an insurance policy, yes, that's great savings, but if you need it because of rising inflation or lower cash flow, it's quite difficult to get access to that money. Same as if you're investing in ETFs or stocks or whatever, you might have to liquidate those positions at a time that is not really suitable for that. So having a decent amount of cash stored or readily available is actually really good at reducing financial stress.
Are you saying outside of the emergency fund?
outside of the emergency fund or together with the emergency fund, holistically, that cash buffer needs to be there. Some people have a couple of pouches of cash or liquidity. Some use, according to their budget, a day-to-day spending cash amount, which is really repopulated with a portion of your salary every month as your day-to-day cash. And others have an emergency cash bucket. Like, what happens if I have something quick and I need relatively valuable cash? And to have that stored in a place where you can get a decent return on that cash, but also not locking it up for a long time so that you can get it when you need to. And a combination of that is what works for most people and keeps them less financially stressed.
Is that the mistake people are making, you think, the biggest one, that, I have emergency savings, that means I'm all good?
Yes, I think a lot of people, put a lot of money away, but that money is not necessarily designed for short-term needs. It's saving for a longer-term purpose, your retirement or a holiday or a marriage. Absolutely, you do have to do that. But you have to remember that when times are tough, like now with increasing inflation, you do need to have a ready bucket of available cash at your disposal. Otherwise, you'll have some stress.
But isn't that what emergency savings means? By nature of the word, is that the single most dangerous mistake people are making with their emergency savings, thinking that that's it and I don't need to put more in, or what?
Well, the emergency savings is really the idea of having something that's liquidly available. Of course, savings is a much broader topic, but the question is, if you ever need to tap into your savings, is that going to have a different financial consequence? For example, if you have to sell a longer term asset at a wrong time and make a loss, or not have it ready for a longer term, what you really want to do is have a nice balance between what you have in your readily available liquid cash and your longer-term savings. What we tend to find is that somewhere between 3 and 6 months of salary or 6 months of expected expenditure is the right amount to have available in liquid cash. Or
living on the edge, I have 12.
And for some people, it's a lot more. And a lot of people have a lot more comfort with that, especially when you're combining that with investing and looking for the right time to invest. Having cash available at your disposal is there. But we find 3 to 6 months is a really nice ballpark for average people. If you're doing 12, that's amazing.
Too little accessible cash is what I'm hearing a lot from what you're saying, Walter, and that's what contributes to financial stress. Yeah. So is there some people or households can straight away implement today a specific rule maybe where they can ensure that they have the right amount of readily available liquidity?
Yeah, one of those two rules, either looking at what's your average expenditure on a month-by-month basis or your average income on a month-by-month basis, and taking a multiple of that as the right amount to hold aside in accessible cash. For some people, doing that as a percentage of salary is easy to do because your salary is kind of the same every month and you can kind of look at your cash balance and see how does it compare. And for other people that are really good budgeters, and most people aren't, I'm not a good budgeter, but I do track the amount of liquidity that I have. But if you are a good budgeter and you want to manage it based on a budget, then looking at having, say, 6 months of your future expenses readily available in cash is a minimum, really, for helping you sleep better at night and having that lower stress.
I reckon we'll need some tips, Walter. Walter de Oude is founder and CEO of Chocolate Finance. We'll talk more about how it's different to look financially organized versus actually being financially prepared. More in a moment.
Good conversations start with the right questions. This season, those questions are about us. The people, the policies, the forces shaping all of us. Lens on Singapore with Clarissa Montero. Back in May. Powered by the journalism of the Business Times. On YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, back to Money Hacks from the Business Times.
Welcome back. Walter, for the average person, earlier you talked about how the definition of a large unexpected expense is changing. It has changed over the past 2 years in particular. Can you talk more about that and how we should be planning for it now?
Financial stress in the past was always about an unexpected financial shock. But what we see now with more inflation is that smaller expenses that are growing or stacking can have an even worse stressful impact on your well-being. And being prepared for that is really what people need to be thinking about. Yes, you have to have enough for a financial shock, but you also need to have enough that you can weather the storm of an increasing inflationary environment or these stacking costs, more petrol, more groceries, more transport, more all of these things that can lead to more and more stress if you don't have enough available to treat those things.
What can we do about it, aside from the very obvious, which is to don't do those things anymore? Yeah. Don't drive a car, no more of them $9 coffees.
So the first thing is actually be prepared and have enough cash available. The second thing is to decide, well, where are you going to keep that cash? And now there are different ways to do that. There's a traditional bank account. You can put it in there, and that's, safe as houses, but it's going to give you next to no interest at all unless you
save more?
The amount of savings would be based on those simple rules, either 3 to 6 months. But where you put it then is up to you. What you want to do is have it readily available and earning the best returns you possibly can. Bank accounts are easily accessed, but don't give you very much interest at all. There are other solutions. You can do it into short-term cash accounts or short-term cash funds. But actually, Chocolate Finance, the business that we built, is designed to really help people with this cash problem. To how do I give you a much better return on your cash and have access to it any time? Imagine returns better than a fixed deposit, but you could take it out any time. And that's what we built with Chocolate Finance to help people specifically with this cash problem.
I don't know how much of a sell that is. Fixed deposits are pretty low these days, the rates.
Well, every bit helps, right? So if you have cash and you need to get the best you can for it, what you really want to do is get the most you possibly can and have it readily available and stable for when you need to.
Yeah, but at what point does, say, chasing those returns become a greater risk than just keeping it under the mattress?
That's exactly right. So obviously, if you have it in a bank, you're going to get very low returns and almost no risk. Chocolate Finance has built a mechanic which is designed to give you a good return on your cash. At the moment, it's 2% on your Sing dollars up to 20,000 and 4.1 on your US dollars up to 20,000, which is a pretty decent return compared to other places in the market. And what we do is we have a top-up program that says that if the returns on the underlying funds underperform, we will top up to make sure that those returns are met up to $50,000 of available balance, which is we think, pretty good alternative to bank-like savings for your cash, given how easy it is to put money in and take it out when you need to.
Because, I think a lot of people feel guilty if they're not fully invested.
That's right. You want to be as fully invested. You want to be as optimized as you can. But what you want is your longer term or savings needs to be optimized, but also your short-term liquidity needs to be optimized. So we recommend that, you're still going to have bank accounts for day-to-day payments and all that other things, but your spare cash, the emergency cash or your liquidity, find somewhere slightly better that's going to give you a slightly better return at very low risk. That's going to give you a better return. If you can get 2% with Chocolate Finance on your cash, that's a good couple of extra cups of coffee a month that you can enjoy.
What's a common cash crunch scenario, though, that shows how those small stacked expenses that you talked about can quickly derail into something that will shake your financial stability, so to speak?
It's really this depleting amount, right? So what you were able to get through the month at X amount of money, next month it costs you X plus 10%, let's say. And that little increasing amount just really wears you down. And it's not so much around the burden that means in terms of your ability to meet it, because you can actually just reduce some of your longer term savings or sell some of your other longer term investments to meet up for it. But it's the stress of it that causes, and it's the anxiety. What you really want to do is be able to sleep at night knowing that you can weather that storm, that you've got your short term cash or your liquidity is enough to weather that, but you don't really have to tap into your long term savings to accommodate for that unnecessarily. That's what gives you the peace of mind and helping you to sleep at night.
Is that what you're doing, Walter?
I am pretty stress-free. I'm using this exact way to manage my own cash. In fact, the Chocolate Finance, when we built that business, it was because I was looking for exactly this kind of solution for myself. And so I think it's pretty cool. And therefore, why not have that available for other people who have the same needs around how can they get a better return on their short-term cash? And that's why we built Chocolate.
What's the biggest stubborn habit in your line of work that you come up against that people just won't break? Is it FOGS, the fear of getting started?
I think everybody has that a little bit. Change is always difficult, and the fear of the unknown. Money generally for most people is an overwhelming anxiety. And to do anything about it is hard, right? You know, most people stick their head in the sand and say, oh, man, do I really need to look at this today? Because I don't want to have that emotional thought around managing myself better. And I find most people unknowingly or knowingly share that same common trait. We've made it super easy to really get over that sense of inertia that people are often afraid of.
Thank you so much for your insights today and for spending time with us.
Thanks for letting me come and share my point of view.
Walter de Oude, founder and CEO of Chocolate Finance. This has been Money Hacks by the Business Times. I'm Howie Lim.
This is a podcast by the Business Times. Find more BT podcasts at businesstimes.com.sg/podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is meant to provide general information only. SPH Media accepts no liability for loss arising from any reliance on the podcast or use of third parties' products and services. Please consult professional advisors for independent advice.